Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery watching the stars through the main screen when the alarm started ringing. The sound cut through the quiet hum of the ship like a knife through paper. His coffee cup shook in his hand as he turned to face the communications station where Peter Adams was working fast over his controls. "Captain, we have a distress signal coming from Grid 7, Alpha," Peter said, without looking up from his screen. His fingers moved quickly over the buttons as data filled the monitors around him. "The signal is weak, but it looks like a ship in trouble." Jake set down his coffee and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with the smooth movements that came from years of training together. Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her science station with worry in her eyes, while Commander Ryan Bell checked the security systems. "How far away?" Jake asked, as he watched the information appear on the main screen. Numbers and lines showed the location of whatever was sending the signal. It was close enough to reach, but far enough to be dangerous if this was some kind of trap. "About 2 hours at full speed, sir," came the answer from Tony Martinez at the navigation station. "But Captain, this signal is not like anything we have seen before. The patterns are all wrong for human technology." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all his years of space travel, he had never encountered anything that was not made by human hands. Earth had been looking for signs of other life for hundreds of years without success. Now something was out there calling for help. "Dr. Grant, what can you tell me about this signal?" Jake asked, turning to his science officer. Lisa Grant was one of the smartest people he knew, and if anyone could figure out what they were dealing with, it would be her. "The frequency patterns suggest advanced technology, Captain. But the design is completely alien to our systems," she said, while studying her readings. "Whatever is sending this signal uses physics, we understand, but applies them in ways we have never seen." Commander Ryan Bell stepped forward with concern written across his face. "Captain, we should contact Earth Command before we investigate. First contact protocols exist for good reasons, and we are not prepared for this kind of situation." Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people who had followed him through dangerous situations before. They trusted his judgment even when it led them into unknown territory. But this was different from anything they had faced. "Peter, can you tell if there are life signs on that ship?" Jake asked. The communications officer worked for several minutes before shaking his head. "The signal is too weak to get clear readings, Captain, but there is something alive over there. The distress call includes what might be biological data, but I cannot make sense of it." Katie Walsh, the ship nurse, spoke up from her medical station. "Captain, if there are injured beings on that ship, they might not have much time. Distress signals usually mean someone is dying." Jake walked to the large window that showed the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there in the darkness was a ship full of aliens who needed help. Everything he had been taught said to wait for orders from Earth Command. Every rule in the book said to approach with extreme caution. But Jake had not become a captain by following every rule. He had learned that sometimes the right thing to do was also the dangerous thing to do. If there were beings dying out there while he waited for permission to help them, he would never forgive himself. Tony set course for the distress signal maximum speed, he ordered. "Peter, keep trying to establish communication." "Dr. Grant, I want full scans the moment we get in range," Captain Ryan Bell said, stepping closer. "This could be a trap. We know nothing about these beings or their intentions. They could be hostile, they could also be dying," Jake replied. "If we were sending a distress signal in alien space, I would hope someone would take the risk to help us." The Discovery turned toward the unknown signal and began moving through space faster than ever before. Jake watched the stars change position on the screen as they rushed toward something that would change human history forever. As they traveled, Jake thought about all the stories humans had told about first contact with alien life. Most of them involved war or invasion or creatures too strange to understand. But the signal they were following was a cry for help, and Jake could not ignore that. "Captain, we are approaching the source of the signal," Tony announced after what felt like hours, but had only been minutes. Visual contact in 30 seconds. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to meet the universe. The alien ship appeared on the main screen like a broken bird floating in the darkness of space. Its hull was cracked and burned with holes that showed the empty void inside. Strange lights flickered along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful and terrible at the same time. "My God," Dr. Lisa Grant whispered from her station. "Captain, the design of that vessel is incredible. Look at those energy patterns. They are using technology that should not be possible." The alien ship was 3 times larger than the Discovery, but it looked fragile, like it might break apart if touched. Parts of it seemed to be growing back together while other sections continued to fall away into space. Jake watched pieces of metal and strange materials drift past their windows. I am detecting one life form aboard the alien vessel, Peter Adams reported from communications. The being appears to be weak but alive, Captain. I think I can establish a basic translation protocol. Jake nodded and moved closer to the communication station. Around him, his crew worked quietly as they studied the first alien ship humanity had ever encountered. The moment felt heavy with history and possibility. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Discovery," he said slowly into the communication system. "We received your distress signal, and we are here to help." For long minutes there was only static and strange noises that might have been alien language. Then a voice came through the speakers that sounded like wind blowing through broken glass. The translation system worked to turn the alien words into something humans could understand. "Human vessel, this is Keeper Vextum of the Zephyrian refugee fleet," the voice said with obvious pain and exhaustion. "We are dying and we need help, but we do not wish to bring danger to your people." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The being on the alien ship was not just injured, but was part of a refugee fleet. That meant there were more ships and more aliens somewhere in space. "Keeper Vextum, we want to help you," Jake replied. "Can you tell us what happened to your ship and where your people are?" The alien voice was quiet for so long that Jake wondered if the communication had been lost. When Vextam spoke again, his words carried such sadness that everyone on the bridge felt it. "Our star died, human captain. It burned bright and then exploded, taking our world and our people with it. We had time to save only a few ships before everything we knew was destroyed." Dr. Grant looked up from her instruments with shock on her face. "Captain, a supernova. Their entire solar system was destroyed by their own star. The energy required for that kind of destruction is unimaginable." "How many of your people survived?" Jake asked gently. He could hear the pain in the alien voice and did not want to make it worse. 12 ships escaped the fire," Vextam said. "But we have been traveling for 50 years searching for a new home. Ships have been lost to accidents and attacks and system failures. Now only 3 ships remain with fewer than 3,000 souls." Katie Walsh stepped forward from her medical station. "Captain, if there are injured beings on that ship, I should examine them. They might need medical attention that only trained hands can provide." Commander Ryan Bell immediately shook his head. "Absolutely not. We do not know anything about alien biology or diseases. Contact with unknown life forms could be fatal to both species." Jake looked at the damaged alien ship on the screen and thought about what Vextum had told them. An entire race reduced to 3 ships and 3,000 individuals floating in space with nowhere to go. The thought made his chest feel tight. "Keeper Vextum," he said into the communication system. "We are going to bring you aboard our ship for medical treatment. Can your people safely interact with humans? Human captain, your kindness honors us, but you do not understand." The alien voice replied with something that might have been crying. "We are not like other species. We are connected to each other in ways that make us dangerous to be around. Every ship we have lost makes the survivors weaker, Doctor." Grant was working frantically at her science station, trying to understand what the alien meant. "Captain, I am detecting unusual neural activity from their ship. It is like their brain patterns are somehow linked together." Across space connected, how Jake asked both his science officer and the alien on the damaged ship. "We feel each other always," Vextam explained. "When one of us dies, all of us feel the death. When one suffers, we all suffer. It was our greatest strength when we numbered in billions, but now it has become our curse." The bridge fell silent as the humans tried to understand what they were hearing. Jake could not imagine what it would be like to feel the death of every person he knew. The thought of carrying that much pain seemed impossible. "That is why other species have turned us away," Vextam continued. "They fear our connection, or they cannot understand how we exist. We have asked 17 different civilizations for help, and all have refused us." Jake made his decision without consulting his crew or Earth Command. Some things were more important than regulations and procedures. "Keeper Vextam, prepare for transport to our ship. We are going to help you." 3 days after bringing Keeper Vextam aboard the Discovery, Jake found himself spending most of his time in the medical bay, talking with the alien refugee. The being looked like a tall, thin human covered in pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the ship lights. His eyes were larger than human eyes and completely black, but somehow they showed more emotion than Jake had ever seen. Vextam was recovering slowly under the care of Katie Walsh, who had discovered that basic human medicine worked surprisingly well on Zephyrian biology. The alien spent his time lying on a medical bed surrounded by monitors that showed his strange, vital signs while he told Jake about his people and their long journey through space. Your species fascinates me, human captain, Vexdam said in his voice that sounded like wind through trees. In 3 days you have shown us more kindness than we have received in 50 years of searching. Why do you help us when others have turned away? Jake sat in a chair next to the medical bed, thinking about the question. Around them, the Discovery hummed with activity as his crew worked to understand everything they could about their alien guests. The other 2 Zephyrian ships had arrived, and were now docked with the human vessel against all regulations and safety protocols. I guess because you need help and we can provide it, Jake said simply. Where I come from, we believe that suffering should be eased when possible, and hope should be given when it can be. Dr. Lisa Grant entered the medical bay carrying a tablet full of data about Zephyrian technology and biology. She had been working without sleep for days, trying to understand how the alien refugees lived and functioned as a connected species. Captain, I have been studying their neural patterns, and the results are incredible, she said excitedly. The Zephyrians do not just communicate with each other telepathically, they actually share consciousness across their entire species. Every individual is connected to every other individual in a network that spans space. Vexdam nodded slowly from his bed. Dr. Grant speaks truth. We are one people with many bodies sharing one great mind. When our numbers were high, this connection made us strong and wise. Now with so few remaining, the network becomes a source of constant pain. Jake tried to imagine what it would feel like to have the thoughts and emotions of 3,000 people flowing through his mind at all times. The idea seemed overwhelming and terrifying, but also strangely beautiful in its completeness. Is that why other species rejected you? Jake asked. Because they were afraid of your mental abilities. Fear, yes, but also misunderstanding. Vex replied with sadness in his black eyes. Many species saw our connection as a threat, believing we might force our thoughts into their minds. Others could not comprehend how we exist as individuals while remaining part of a greater whole. Engineer Carl Murphy appeared in the doorway of the medical bay with excitement written across his face. Captain, you need to see what we found in the Zephyrian computer systems. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas, especially in fields related to consciousness and mental energy. Jake looked between his engineer and the alien refugee, wondering how much they could learn from each other. The Discovery had become a meeting place between 2 species that seemed designed to help one another despite coming from completely different worlds. Keeper Vexdam, Jake said carefully. Would it be possible for a human to experience your connection? Temporarily. Not permanently, but just long enough to understand what you are going through. Dr. Grant immediately stepped forward with concern on her face. Captain, that could be extremely dangerous. We do not know what effects alien mental contact might have on human consciousness. You could suffer permanent brain damage or worse. Commander Ryan Bell chose that moment to enter the medical bay with a tablet displaying urgent messages from Earth Command. His expression showed the stress of trying to manage a first contact situation that had already gone far beyond normal procedures. Captain, Earth Command is demanding immediate reports on our status and the alien contact, he said grimly. Admiral Brooks wants to know why we have allowed aliens aboard our ship without authorization and why we have not followed standard containment protocols. Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like a heavy coat. Every decision he made now would affect not just his crew, but potentially the future relationship between humans and the first alien species they had encountered. Tell Earth Command that we are dealing with refugee civilians, not hostile forces, he said firmly. These beings are dying, and we are in a position to help them. Sometimes the right thing to do is more important than following procedure. Vexdam had been listening to the conversation with growing understanding in his alien features. Human Captain, you risk much for people you have known for only days. Your superiors are angry with your choices, yet you continue to help us. This behavior confuses but also amazes us. Jake smiled at the alien and felt something shift in his understanding of what was happening aboard his ship. Vexdam, I think humans and Zephyrians might have more in common than either of our species realizes. We both understand what it means to suffer, and we both know the value of hope. Jake stood alone with Vexdam in the empty cargo bay where they could speak without interruption from his worried crew. 2 weeks had passed since the Zephyrians came aboard, and Jake had spent every free moment learning about their culture and their pain. Tonight would be different because tonight he planned to do something that could save or destroy both their species. Human Captain, you understand that what you propose has never been attempted between our peoples, Vexdam said, with concern flowing through his voice like water over stones. The mental connection that binds my species together might be too intense for a human mind to survive. Jake nodded, but did not change his mind. Around them the cargo bay felt huge and empty, with only the soft lights from the ceiling providing warmth in the cold space. He had chosen this place because it was far from the bridge where Dr. Grant and Commander Bell would try to stop him if they knew what he planned. "I need to understand what you are going through," Jake said simply. "Every time I try to help your people, I feel like I am missing something important. How can I know what you need if I do not know what you feel?" Vexter moved closer with the strange flowing motion that all Zephyrians used when they walked. His pale blue skin seemed to glow brighter when he was emotional, and right now he looked like a star in the darkness of the cargo bay. "The connection will show you everything, human captain," the alien said softly. "You will feel the death of our homeworld and the loss of billions of our people. You will experience the slow dying of our species as ship after ship has been destroyed. The pain might break your mind." Jake thought about his crew sleeping safely in their quarters and about the 3,000 Zephyrian refugees living in their damaged ships connected to his vessel. Someone had to take the risk of truly understanding what was happening, or both species might lose this chance forever. "I am ready," he said, reaching out his hand toward the alien. "Show me what it means to be Zephyrian." Vextum hesitated for a moment, then slowly extended his own hand until their fingers touched. The moment their skin made contact, Jake felt like lightning was flowing through his entire body. The cargo bay disappeared, and suddenly he was floating in space, watching a star grow brighter and brighter until it exploded. The death of the Zephyrian homeworld hit Jake like a physical blow that knocked all the air from his lungs. He felt the terror of billions of beings as they realized their sun was about to destroy everything they had ever known. The desperate rush to escape in whatever ships could be prepared fast enough. The screaming of those left behind as fire consumed their planet, but worse than the destruction was what came after. Jake experienced the slow death of hope as the refugee ships wandered through empty space searching for a new home. He felt every loss as ships were destroyed by accidents, or hostile aliens, or simple mechanical failure. Each death created a hole in the network of connected minds that made the survivors weaker and more desperate. The loneliness was the worst part. Jake understood now why 17 different species had rejected the Zephyrians. Their mental connection was so complete and so intense that other beings could not comprehend how they existed. The refugees were not just homeless, they were fundamentally alone in a universe that could not understand them. Through the connection, Jake felt the presence of 3,000 minds, all linked together in a web of shared consciousness. He experienced their memories of a beautiful world covered in cities that grew like living things and oceans that sang with the voices of their people. He saw children who would never grow up and elders who had died watching their civilization burn. The pain was overwhelming, but Jake forced himself to stay connected because mixed with the grief was something else. Hope. Even after 50 years of rejection and loss, the Zephyrians still believed they could find a place in the universe. They still fought to survive because somewhere in their shared consciousness was the unshakable belief that life was worth preserving. Jake saw himself through Zephyrian eyes and understood why his species might be different from all the others they had encountered. Humans carried their own scars from wars and disasters and loss, but they had learned to transform pain into strength. The refugees could sense this quality in human consciousness, and it drew them like planets orbiting a star. The connection lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours when Jake finally pulled his hand away from Vexdam and collapsed to the floor of the cargo bay. His mind felt stretched and changed as if he had tried to hold an ocean in a cup. But he was alive, and more importantly, he understood. "Now you know," Vexdam said, kneeling beside the human captain with worry in his black eyes. "Now you feel what we feel and understand why we are dying even though our bodies still live." Jake struggled to his feet with his thoughts still spinning from the experience. The weight of 3,000 minds pressing against his consciousness had been almost much to bear, but it had also shown him something incredible about both their species. "You are not just refugees," he said with growing excitement in his voice. "You are survivors carrying the memory of an entire civilization. And humans are not just another species that might reject you. We are the people who have learned to heal from trauma and build hope from despair." Vexdam looked at him with something that might have been the first real hope Jake had seen in the aliens since they met. Around them the cargo bay seemed smaller and warmer, as if the connection had changed the space itself. "What do we do now, human captain?" the Zephyrian asked. "How do we move forward when my people have nowhere to go and your superiors want us gone?" Jake stood in his ready room staring at the communication screen that showed Admiral Helen Brooks sitting behind her desk on Earth. Her face carried the expression of someone who had run out of patience 3 conversations ago. Behind her, Jake could see the flags and symbols of Earth Command. reminding him that his career and possibly his freedom depended on what happened in the next few minutes. "Captain Morrison, you have violated every first contact protocol we have established, Admiral," Brooks said with ice in her voice. "You have allowed alien beings aboard your vessel without authorization, conducted unauthorized experiments, and now you are requesting permission to establish a permanent alien settlement in human space." Jake took a deep breath and tried to find the right words to explain something that seemed impossible to communicate through normal military channels. Around him, his ready room felt small and cramped compared to the vast implications of what he was proposing. "Admiral, the Zephyrians are not a threat to human security," he said carefully. "They are refugees fleeing a cosmic disaster that destroyed their entire civilization. More than that, they represent an opportunity for humanity to establish the first truly cooperative relationship with an alien species." "Opportunity," Admiral Brooks repeated with skepticism written across her features. "Captain, these beings possess telepathic abilities that could compromise human mental security. They have technology we do not understand and motivations we cannot verify. The risks are enormous." Jake activated his personal tablet and began transmitting the data his crew had gathered over the past 3 weeks. Scientific readings, biological analysis, and most importantly, the psychological profiles that showed how human contact was actually helping the Zephyrians recover from their trauma. "Admiral, please review the attached files," he said, while sending the information across space to Earth Command. "Dr. Grant has documented that limited contact with human consciousness actually strengthens Zephyrian mental stability. We are not just helping them survive, we are learning from each other on the screen." Admiral Brooks paused to read the incoming data while Jake waited for her response. Through the walls of his ready room, he could hear the sounds of his crew working alongside Zephyrian refugees to repair damaged systems and share knowledge between their species. "These reports are interesting, Captain, but they do not address the fundamental question of security," the Admiral said after reviewing the scientific data. "How do we know these aliens will not attempt to control human minds or use their abilities against us?" Jake smiled, despite the seriousness of the situation, because he knew the answer to that question from his experience in the cargo bay. With Vextum, the connection had shown him not just Zephyrian pain, but also their character and their values. "Because, Admiral, they are incapable of mental aggression," he explained. "The same empathic connection that makes them vulnerable to collective grief also prevents them from harming other conscious beings. They literally cannot attack without hurting themselves." Dr. Amanda Foster appeared on Jake's communication system requesting permission to join the conversation. He accepted the request and her face appeared on a secondary screen showing the tired but excited expression of someone who had been working around the clock on breakthrough research. "Admiral Brooks, this is Dr. Foster, the Discovery Medical Officer," she said quickly. "I need to report that controlled empathic contact with Zephyrians is producing remarkable results in human volunteers. Enhanced emotional intelligence, improved conflict resolution skills, and what appears to be accelerated psychological healing." Admiral Brooks looked between Jake and Dr. Foster, with growing interest replacing some of the skepticism in her expression. "Explain what you mean by enhanced abilities, Doctor." "The Zephyrian empathic network seems to teach humans how to better understand and process emotions," Dr. Foster replied excitedly. "Crew members who have participated in limited contact sessions show measurable improvements in mental health and interpersonal relationships." Jake seized the opportunity to present his complete proposal. "Admiral, I am requesting permission to establish a joint colony where humans and Zephyrians can coexist permanently. The refugees need a stable home, and humanity needs what they can teach us about consciousness and emotional development. A joint colony," Admiral Brooks repeated slowly. "Captain, you are talking about the first integrated alien-human settlement in history. The implications for our species' development and our position in galactic politics would be enormous." "Yes, Admiral, they would be," Jake agreed. "But consider the alternative. The Zephyrians are dying despite having technology and knowledge that could benefit all sentient life. If we let them fade away, we lose not just 3,000 lives, but an entire civilization worth of wisdom." Tony Martinez entered Jake's ready room carrying a tablet with navigation data about potential colony sites. "Captain, we have identified 17 systems within human space that could support both species with minimal terraforming required." Admiral Brooks was quiet for long minutes as she processed everything she had heard. Jake could see her weighing the risks against the potential benefits while considering how history would judge the decision she was about to make. "Captain Morrison, your proposal is either the most brilliant diplomatic breakthrough in human history or the most dangerous," mistake our species has ever made," she said finally. "But the data you have provided suggests the potential benefits outweigh the risks." Jake felt his heart rate increase as he realized the Admiral was actually considering approving his request. Around him, the Discovery continued its work of bringing two species together in ways that had never been attempted before. "You have provisional authorization to proceed with colony planning," Admiral Brooks announced. "But Captain, this project will be monitored closely, and any sign of danger to human welfare will result in immediate termination." Jake smiled and felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had been carrying since the moment he decided to help the Zephyrian refugees. "Thank you, Admiral. I believe this decision will change both our species for the better." 6 months later, Jake stood on a hill overlooking the first human Zephyrian colony, watching the sun set over New Haven. The planet stretched out below him, showing a landscape dotted with buildings that seemed to grow from the ground itself, mixing human engineering with Zephyrian organic architecture. In the distance, he could see children from both species playing together in parks that had been designed to accommodate different physiologies and cultural needs. The colony had grown faster than anyone had expected. Word of the successful integration had spread through human space, bringing volunteers from dozens of worlds who wanted to be part of this historic experiment. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and teachers had arrived to work alongside Zephyrian experts in fields that humans were only beginning to understand. Vextum approached from behind, moving with the flowing grace that Jake had learned to associate with Zephyrian contentment. The alien refugee had become the leader of his people council, and one of Jake's closest friends during the establishment of their new home. "Human Captain, your people continue to amaze us with their capacity for growth and adaptation," Vextum said in his voice that now carried hope instead of despair. "Today I felt something through our network that we have not experienced since the death of our homeworld." Jake turned to face his alien friend with curiosity in his expression. Over the months he had learned to read Zephyrian emotions through their subtle changes in skin color and the patterns of light that flowed beneath their pale blue surface. "What did you feel?" Jake asked, knowing that whatever Vextam had experienced would be significant. The Zephyrian network had become a source of strength rather than pain, as the refugees found stability in their new home. "Peace," Vextam said simply. "For the first time in 50 years, my people felt true peace flowing through our shared consciousness. The constant ache of loss and fear has been replaced by something we thought we would never know again." Jake smiled and looked back toward the colony, where lights were beginning to appear in windows as families from both species prepared for the evening meal. Human children were learning Zephyrian songs, while alien youngsters discovered human games that required individual thinking rather than group consciousness. Dr. Lisa Grant climbed the hill to join them, carrying a tablet full of the Let's Hest research data. Her work on interspecies psychology had become the foundation for integration protocols that were already being studied by governments throughout human space. "Jake, you need to see these numbers," she said excitedly. "The psychological benefits of human Zephyrian contact are exceeding all our projections. Both species are showing improvements in emotional stability, creative thinking, and problem-solving abilities. The children show the most remarkable development," Vextam added, with something like wonder in his voice. "Human youngsters who grow up with limited empathic contact develop enhanced emotional intelligence, while our children learn individual creativity that strengthens rather than disrupts the network." Jake took the tablet from Dr. Grant and reviewed the data that documented 6 months of successful integration. Crime rates in the colony were practically zero. Mental health issues had dropped dramatically among both populations. Most surprising of all, productivity and innovation had increased as human creativity combined with Zephyrian collective consciousness. "Captain, we are receiving requests from 12 other refugee groups asking if New Haven might be willing to accept them," Dr. Grant continued. "Apparently word has spread through the galaxy that humans are willing to help displaced species." Jake felt a mix of pride and responsibility as he considered the implications. New Haven had become more than just a home for the Zep. It was proving that different species could not only coexist but thrive together in ways that benefited everyone involved. Carl Murphy appeared at the bottom of the hill, calling up to them with excitement in his voice. "Captain Vextam, you have to come see this. The children have built something incredible in the community center." The three of them followed the engineer down into the colony, where a crowd had gathered around a large building that served as a meeting place for both species. Inside, Jake found human and Zephyrian children working together on a massive art project that seemed to tell the story of their two civilizations. The artwork showed the destruction of the Zephyrian homeworld and their long journey through space. but it also depicted their arrival at human space and the friendship that had developed between the species. At the center of the piece was an image of hands reaching across the stars to offer help to those in need. They call it the Empathy Memorial. A young human girl named Amy Chen explained to the adults, "It shows how people from different worlds can help each other when they choose to care instead of being afraid." Vextum knelt down beside the human child with tears flowing down his blue cheeks. "Young Amy, your species has given mine something more precious than a new home. You have given us hope that consciousness and compassion can overcome any barrier." Jake looked around at the mixed crowd of humans and Zephyrians admiring the children artwork and felt something shift in his understanding of what they had accomplished. This was not just about saving one refugee species or establishing one successful colony. This was about proving that empathy and understanding could bridge any gap between thinking beings. As night fell over New Haven, Jake walked through streets where humans and Zephyrians lived and worked together, creating something entirely new. In the galaxy, children ran past speaking in mixtures of both languages, while adults collaborated on projects that neither species could have imagined alone. The colony had become a beacon for other refugee species and a model for human expansion into the galaxy. But more than that, it had shown both civilizations what they could become when they chose cooperation over fear and understanding over isolation. Jake stopped in the central square, where a fountain played water and light in patterns that pleased both human and Zephyrian senses. Above him, stars filled the sky, including the distant point of light that had once been the Zephyrian homeworld. Tonight, those stars did not represent loss, but infinite possibility for species willing to reach across the darkness to help each other.